You know, the United Kingdom once ruled the largest empire in history. Today, despite its relatively small size, Britain remains one of the most influential economies in the entire world, but its power comes from a totally different source now. In this explainer, we're going to dive into how the UK manages to stay such a global economic titan with a massive international footprint, and we'll break down the mechanics of its rise, its current power, and exactly where it's heading. So you might be wondering, how exactly does a small island nation maintain this kind of economic gravity? Well, to understand their wealth today, we actually have to look way past history. Global influence isn't about geography anymore. It's about the modern mechanics of advanced finance, digital trade, and human capital. It's all about absolute adaptability. Let's jump into chapter 1 and map out the UK's economic engine to see how it powers the modern era. Look, if you still picture Britain and only think of the Industrial Revolution, you're missing the modern reality. The UK is overwhelmingly a service-based economy. As of 2023, services contributed a staggering 82% to the national GDP. We're talking about everything from the creative industries to world-class legal counsel and, of course, global finance. And because of that massive focus on high-level services, London holds a really unique position. It is officially recognized as one of just 3 command centers of the entire global economy, standing right alongside New York and Tokyo. It essentially acts as this giant central nervous system for international commerce. Moving to our next section, let's zoom in on Europe's financial capital to see the very heart of global money. If London is the global command center, then districts like Canary Wharf and the historic city of London, they are the engine rooms. The sheer density of financial infrastructure here is just mind-blowing. Over 500 banks hold offices here. It's an absolute premier hub for Eurobonds and foreign exchange, blending historic giants like the Bank of England with ultra-modern capital markets. To really put that influence into perspective for a second, this concentrated financial services sector alone injects over £116 billion into the UK economy every single year. It massively boosts the nation's balance of payments. It's an export, for sure, but it's an export of expertise, capital management, and risk assessment. But they don't just deal in invisible services. Let's head into section 3 and look at Britain's £364.3 billion physical export machine. As the data shows, advanced manufacturing is still incredibly lucrative for the UK. Cars actually lead the physical export market at over £31 billion, followed really closely by power generators and pharmaceuticals. These are highly complex, high-value items, and they drive the bulk of that £364 billion in total exported goods. Now, when we look at exactly where these goods end up going, well, despite all the shifting political landscapes over the last decade, the European Union remains the dominant partner, taking in over 41%. But check this out. A massive 22% flows directly into the United States. These 2 pipelines are absolutely vital to Britain's trade network. It's not all smooth sailing, though. In section 4, we need to talk about Britain's hidden challenge, the productivity puzzle. Every economic powerhouse faces headwinds, right? But for Britain, the drop-off in worker output is undeniable. Before the 2008 financial crisis, the growth in output per British worker averaged a really healthy 2%. Post-crisis, that growth plummeted to just 0.6%. It essentially flatlined. Which leaves economists asking a pretty critical question. Why does a nation with such incredible financial dominance have a labor productivity rate that sits roughly 14% lower than France and 23% lower than the US? With their world-class universities and massive capital, it's a genuine puzzle. Well, recent research points to a tale of 2 economies. On one end, you have these high-productivity frontier firms in finance, aerospace, and tech that are absolutely world-beating. But trailing behind them is a massive long tail of lower productivity, labor-intensive businesses, especially in retail, that have just been way too slow to adopt digital transformation. And the crazy part is the financial upside if they solve this. As PwC points out, if the UK could simply match Germany's efficiency levels, it would pump an extra £180 billion into the UK economy every single year. That equates to about £5,800 higher for every single worker. The prize for fixing this is just enormous. So, how do they capture that prize? That brings us to our final section, building a £1 trillion tech and AI ecosystem. To close that gap, the UK is rapidly modernizing its industrial strategy. They are targeting advanced manufacturing, a sector that already outputs a highly productive £58 per hour. And because 84% of those manufacturing jobs sit outside of London, investing there spreads that high productivity wealth and digital literacy across the entire country. And you can literally see the momentum building. As of 2026, the total enterprise valuation of the UK tech sector hit a colossal £1.2 trillion. No question about it, it is Europe's undisputed #1 tech ecosystem. They aren't just resting on legacy banking. They're aggressively building a digital empire. A massive driver of all this? Artificial intelligence. Backed by those deep capital markets we talked about, British AI startups secured over £8.2 billion in venture capital in just the first half of 2026, growing twice as fast as their European counterparts. They have the talent, and they definitely have the funding. The UK undeniably has the foundation, the immense financial gravity of London, a £1.2 trillion tech ecosystem, and incredibly deep pools of investment capital. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep analyzing, keep learning, because ultimately we are left with one massive, provocative question. Can the UK seamlessly fuse its historic legacy of global finance with this explosive AI innovation to lead the next global industrial revolution?